Hey everybody, it is Kerry with Trail Traveler, and this is the last diesel heater review of the season. I promise you, this is the last one because this is going to be our lowest priced unit that we're looking at. This is the Vevor diesel heater. They say it's 8 kilowatt, Bluetooth app, remote control, all that good stuff for $175.99. Definitely the cheapest by at least 70 bucks or so from any of the other ones that we've taken a look at this season. Let's get into it, okay? There are definitely some things that I like about this and some things that I don't like about it. What I do like about it, okay, well, it has a 5-liter tank. It's got a wireless remote. It has the best app of any diesel heater that I've looked at. The app even can set on and off times for any day of the week. Very, very cool stuff on there. It comes with, you know, your basic cardboard type hoses. It comes with an exhaust pipe and the basic, if you want to call that a muffler. It doesn't really muffle anything. On the other side, we have the exhaust port, just plugs right in there. Nothing too fancy. The rear just has power input and the intake for the fresh air. But let's look at the front. So we have a different controller than we've seen before, which honestly, I haven't even used this. I use the app. It's so much better and it's so easy to use. We got a 3-inch output on here. Wish that was 3.5 or 4-inch. You know, if this was a true 8 kilowatt diesel heater, you'd want a bigger output on here. So that 8 kilowatt claim, I don't know about that, but we'll ignore that from now. Right here, though, is a carbon dioxide or a carbon monoxide sensor. That is super, super cool. And you can use just a standard aux cable to extend this. You can take this screw out, take this, use a standard 3.5 millimeter aux cable, put this anywhere, put it up in the tent, plug it into the port that's right here, boom, just like that, and you have a carbon monoxide sensor. If the carbon monoxide levels get too high, it automatically shuts off. That is the coolest thing I've seen on a diesel heater this season. This literally could be a lifesaver if something goes wrong and it starts spewing carbon monoxide into your sleeping quarters. Gotta say, that super cool. All right, so that being said, it's a really nice, sturdy design, folding handles. It's kind of pointless when you have the fuel cap that sticks up. This is just your standard, same type of cap that most of the other ones have. If you are taking this off-roading, which, I mean, if you're on this channel, you probably are, these will probably leak on you. It'll probably come out that vent hole, so you'll want to put a piece of tape over it. I usually take like one of our doggy poop bags, put it on there, tighten this down. That prevents leaking, not a big deal. But does it work? So we tested it, and there are some very interesting results, gotta say. I was impressed. I was definitely impressed with the heating performance. We started at 4 o'clock in the morning. It was 17 degrees outside. We're using a Tough Stuff Overland Alpine 61 tent, which has pretty much zero insulation on it. And since this is what we use when we're out camping and overlanding, of course, that's what we're going to test it with. So how did it do? Well, we started at 4 a.m. At 5 a.m., so 1 hour later, inside the tent, it was 55.7 degrees. So an hour, and it heated this thing up to a nice, comfortable level. 55 degrees, I can sit in there, I can have, you know, my clothes on, I'm gonna be pretty comfortable. And, you know, if I wanted to sleep at 55, that'd be fine. But, you know, just a couple blankets or whatever, you're gonna be fine. But a half hour later, it was up to 57 degrees. Now that's pretty darn comfortable. I keep our house at 60 degrees. So I'm quite comfortable in that 57 to 60 degrees. Little blanket, no problem. I'm good to go. I'm gonna sleep like a baby at that type of temperature. It kind of stabilized right there at 57 degrees. I did do a sound test on it at that point. It is 72 decibels. That makes this the loudest heater that I've tested so far. Not counting stuff from last year. From this year's models that I've tested, by far the loudest by at least 12 decibels. So that's pretty significant. At that point, I turned it up to level 4 just to see kind of what I could get it, what it would go up to at the next level. Well, at that, it got up to 65 degrees. That's super comfy in there. That's actually warm. All I need is a light blanket at that point, and I'm gonna be really comfortable. But let's talk about that noise for a bit. The exhaust on here is pretty loud, but that's no louder than most of the others. The only one that has a quieter exhaust is the LF Bros N2 Pro, and it's because it has a much better muffler on it. So that exhaust is actually pretty quiet. The blower on here, pretty much the same volume on all the diesel heaters. So that's not a big deal. The fuel pump noise on here is the most obnoxious I have seen this year. The only diesel heater I've ever used that had a louder fuel pump on it was last year's Vevor model. So this year, only a tiny improvement. To the point that I would not take this camping. There is no way I would put this right here and run this into my tent and try and sleep. That fuel pump noise is annoying to me. I know there's other people that it doesn't bother them. I'll save the money. I'll get a cheaper unit. I don't mind the ticking noise. It helps me sleep. That's great for you. If you're that person and you don't mind that ticking noise, then this is probably a great unit because it is the cheapest one that we've reviewed this year. For me, I can't deal with that. It's got to be much, much quieter than this. So you get what you pay for, right? You want to save a bunch of money, you're going to deal with the ticking sound on here. So that concludes the review. It's inexpensive. It's got the carbon monoxide sensor. It warmed up the tent very nicely. Very impressed with the performance there, but the ticking noise has got to go. So what we're going to do next, we're going to open this up. We're going to see if we can quiet down that fuel pump. Now, one thing I really like about this, we just have screws here. We don't have rivets I have to drill out, nothing like that. I take a bunch of screws out here. I can lift this top up and I can see if there's ways of quieting down that fuel pump. Now, sometimes it's really just as easy as taking the mount off because it's solidly mounted on there and just hanging it with some zip ties so that the pump is free, because a lot of the noise that you can hear from some, and I don't know about this one because I haven't opened it up yet, but sometimes that pumping noise, because the pumps are hard mounted in there, just resonates through the whole thing. Now, I suspect that might be the problem here. And if so, I'll just remove that mount and I'll just suspend it with some zip ties or something so that it's not contacting any of the solid surfaces. And hopefully that's going to be enough to kill the sound in here. If not, is what it is. But if we can quiet this thing down, then this could be a really nice unit. Now, I may also take some sound insulation material, put it on the inside of the case, just a few things that I can do that aren't going to cause any problems with the operation and not require any significant or costs to it. I'm not going to replace the fuel pump. I'm going to try and suspend it. We'll add some sound insulation to it. Maybe I can pack some insulation around the pump itself if it by itself is just making a lot of noise. So we're going to do whatever we can without spending money to see if we can quiet this down and make this actually a really good purchase. So stick around. We're going to be tearing this thing down. So we've got the Vevor heater opened up here so you can see the insides. And I've taken the mount off of the fuel pump because it was hard mounted to the side. Now some people say that all you have to do is suspend the fuel pump so that it's not touching anything and it'll be ultra quiet. That's obviously not the case. We're going to get a sound level on it. I'm going to try and be as consistent as possible. We're running 72 dB on that fuel pump. So our goal is going to be to try and get this as quiet as possible. If we can get it down under 50 dB, then this thing will be relatively quiet. Now, a couple things that I'm going to do. I'm going to try some different types of material wrapped around it to see if one thing works better than something else. And we're going to see if we can quiet this thing down with a minimal of expense. Of course, I could just replace the fuel pump with a quieter fuel pump, but now you're talking 30 bucks, 40 bucks for a good fuel pump. We're going to try and make this work with just some sound deadening material and see if we can make this thing as quiet as possible. Well, let's see how we did. First off, we used some AGG sound material, wrapped it around the fuel pump a few times, tried to cover it up as much as possible, and then we've stuffed the remaining area with acoustic foam. So we were at 72 dB before. Let's see where we're at now. Now we're at around 66. So we've definitely reduced the sound quite a bit, about 8 dB. So next I'm going to take some of the AGG sound material and place it inside of here and see if that, once it's all put back together, will make a difference. In fact, we should try it without it just to see what kind of difference that we get. Because originally we were getting 72 dB outside. So we're down to 64 dB. So we're making some progress. This is definitely a lot more doable at this point. But if we can reduce that sound a little bit more by sound insulating this, yeah, we might have a winner here. So we're going to give that a try. So I used all the material that I had. Again, try not to spend any money, just use what I have laying around here. And I'm gonna get this installed and then we'll see where we're at in terms of noise. Well, I've got her all buttoned up and let's check the sound. So we're down to about 62, 63 dB. So we've dropped the sound by 10 decibels. That's pretty significant. I mean, you can hear it's not bad at all now. So out of the box, it's a bit loud, which is going to be fine for certain applications. If this is mounted outside and you're running the heat inside, of a shed, something, probably not a big deal. If you're running this into a tent, it's going to be really loud. A little bit of modification, not really much of anything, just some foam and some deadening material. I mean, probably total cost of what I did in here was probably in the under $10 range versus having to replace the fuel pump at a pretty, you know, $30–40 price. Now, I do have an upgraded muffler on here. This is the LF Bros muffler, which I was using to make sure that the exhaust was quiet as possible so we could focus on the fuel pump noise. Now, there are upgraded mufflers that you can buy on Amazon. I'll link to one in the description below, which will quiet the exhaust down significantly. So at this point, I think we've got a great product here with the carbon monoxide sensor built in for safety, the heat output that this thing did, the way it was able to cool down or heat up the freezing cold tent, you know, when it was under 20 degrees, and get that thing up to 65 degrees. For this price point, this is pretty good. But if you're looking for a quiet unit right out of the box, this is not going to be it. However, a little bit of effort and you're going to be good to go. And thankfully, they built it with these screws that make it real easy to get this thing taken apart, serviced, and do whatever upgrades you want. So, final thoughts. For the cheapest, least expensive diesel heater that we have tested this season, you can make this thing extremely useful fairly easily. So that's going to wrap it up for me here at Trail Traveler. Thanks for watching, everyone. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you on the trails.